Okay. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Those with us this evening in Clarendon Hall, and particularly people watching at home. My name is Gareth Roberts, Councillor. Frankie. We'll get this sorted by 9 o'clock, I promise. My name is Councillor Gareth Roberts. I'm the Leader of the Council and your Chair for this evening, and I'm delighted to be joined on the panel by my fellow committee chairs, and I will ask them to introduce themselves from my right.
Oh, hello. Well, I'm Councillor Penny Frost. I'm the Chair of Education and Children's Services Committee and the Ward Councillor for Ham Petersham and Richmond Riverside. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alexander Amon. I'm a councillor for St Margaret's and North Twickenham and Chair of the Transport and Air Quality Committee.
Julia?
Hello, I'm Councillor Julia Needham-Watts. I'm a Ward Councillor for Twickenham Riverside, where we are tonight. And I chair the Environment, Sustainability, Culture and Sports Committee.
Good evening, my name's Jim Millard. I'm a Ward Councillor for Hampton Wick and South Teddington and lead member for Housing and Joint Deputy Leader of Richmond Council.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Phil Giesler. I'm a Ward Councillor for Teddington. I'm the Council spokesperson for Business and Economic Growth.
So there we are. The format of this evening's meeting is for you to raise questions that you wish to ask of the council. Now, we're trying to keep the matters as broad as we possibly can, because sometimes we can get into the nitty-gritty of a tiny issue, which only really is of interest to about 3 people in the whippet. So if you take your cue through buses, for example, everybody has a view on buses. They're either too full, 2 or 3 come along at once, there's never one when you want one, all of that. But the minute that you start getting into the minutiae of the stopping pattern of a single route, then people glaze over and find something else to do. So if we can try and keep things as broad as we can, that's not to say don't raise individual issues, but try and keep things as broad as we can. And then possibly we'll get other people in the room once this humming dies down, for which I apologise. Then we can have a genuine conversation rather than just being on broadcast mode. I should add, by the way, that in addition to the chairs, we have other councillors and lead members available in the room. We have Nancy Baldwin, who is our community spokesperson. We have Robin Brown, who is our finances spokesperson. We have Councillor Julia Cambridge, who is the Vice Chair of the Education and Children's Services Committee and is also Chair of our Looked After Children's Committee. We have Councillor Alan Jorians, who is a Vice Chair of Environment and our Sports Champion. John Coombs, who is our Culture Spokesperson. And Councillor James Chard, who is our Vice Chair of the Transport and Equality Committee. So that's introductions done and dusted. If we can try and keep to questions as opposed to speeches, that would be lovely. And now for the next hour and 56 minutes, or unless you want to go home early, that's fine. The floor is now yours. So who has our first? Lady right at the back. If you can shout out your name for us, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Wood. I would like to know what the plans are for all the empty shops in the borough. I mean, I was just looking as I was walking from work today, and every morning I walk past the empty Burger King, which has been empty for years. There are the banks that are closed down that have been empty for at least a year, if not more. Why is this? I realise that there are some shops in Twickenham Riverside that have been closed because that's the area you're going to redevelop. But Twickenham is just, well, it always has a high turnover of shops, which I never quite understand, but it's looking desolate at the moment. There have been shops that, as I say, have been empty for months and years. Richmond is not looking much better. There seem to be rumours flying all around about what's happening with the Whole Foods site. So why is this the case, that there are so many empty places, and what are your plans for them?
Councillor Giesler.
Is this work? Is
Yes.
that working?
Yes.
People? Yeah, can you hear me? No. Okay, so that's better. It's now. Thanks for the question. And I think, you know, the whole issue of turnover of shops, vacancies is clearly something which people have noticed. And of course, we've been through some pretty tough economic times over the last 5 years. If you think about COVID, if you think about Brexit, if you think about the crisis we've had in the last few years as well. So it's been tough on the retail environment. I'd also say, of course, retailing is changing as well. So, you know, there's an awful lot, all of us, I'm sure, do much more in terms of online shopping these days, particularly when it comes to food, particularly when it comes to certain areas, obviously fashion less so. But so the habits have changed, and of course, shops therefore turn over. I would so say on the positive side that actually when you look at the vacancy rates, on the surface, you might see some shops that are persistently closed. And yes, I agree, we do have a problem sometimes with banks, particularly because when you have vaults in the bottom of the banks, it makes it much more difficult to basically re-rent the properties. Some manage, some don't. But actually, our vacancy rates aren't too bad at the moment. In Twickenham, vacancy rates are about 8%. Richmond, similar level. That's actually way below the country's average at the moment. And also, it's about the same as our pre-COVID levels. So we've actually recovered in many cases quite substantially from where we were. We also do see, of course, quite a lot of turnover. So you mentioned Whole Foods in Richmond. We do expect a new tenant in that building quite soon. We've got tenants coming into the old House of Fraser site in Richmond as well. We've got new restaurants coming in. So I think it's a tricky one. Yes, you do see some areas, but I think in general you're also seeing some new retailers coming in. And I think also one of the things we are seeing is the Richmond Borough, in many senses, is seen as quite a positive place now to locate. So we're seeing a number of shops coming in and making their first foray in London or the south into Richmond as a borough, because they do see us in many ways compared to other parts of the London, other parts of the economy as a place where they can actually succeed. So, you know, I think it is a very mixed bag, and I wouldn't doubt the fact that there's still it's a difficult situation. I was talking to a business in Teddington on Saturday, and of course they're above water and they're doing all right, but they're still finding that their trading levels are lower than they wanted. They're finding it quite difficult to recruit and keep people at the moment, and they're still finding that their costs are higher as well. So it is a difficult environment. In terms of what we can do, we've run a lot of campaigns, particularly for our local independent businesses. We've done quite a lot of advertising for them. We did a campaign recently, for instance, for the businesses down at the footbridge in Teddington as the bridge was about to close, and I was talking to an owner there yesterday who said there'd been a positive impact from that as well. So we're doing our best. We have limited tools in our armoury regarding things like business rates, because clearly that's a central government policy, and at the moment we can only recoup half the level of business rates within the borough, something we would like to change as well. And we do want to try and encourage where we can pop-up shops in places where you do have vacancies. But that's not easy because obviously we don't own a lot of these places. We don't dictate exactly which shops come in. And so we have to make deals with the landlords in those areas as well. So that can be tricky. So I wouldn't say, in summary, I would absolutely agree that it's a tricky situation at the moment. I wouldn't say the situation is as bad as you paint in terms of actual vacancies at the moment. And there are things we can do, but in some cases, you know, we have to recognise the fact that we are at the mercy of trends and at the mercy of the economy in general.
Alex, just one brief addition to all the remarks which Phil's very ably made there. It's just to say, I think that the council have also intervened and will continue to intervene in some of these places as well with programmes of work. I mean, Church Street, as a case in point, we as an administration took the decision to pedestrianise and has been, frankly, a roaring success. And Church Street sees vacancy rates well below many other parts of the borough. I'm not saying pedestrianisation is a solution to every town centre, but I think what it does point to is the need to encourage a very successful and vibrant space for shoppers to be able to walk, observe goods and make purchases. in my view, and it's just my view for what it's worth, Richmond Town Centre suffers a lot of weaknesses in that regard, with very narrow pavements and constraint points all over the place. And that's why there's a very large piece of work, including the transport elements of reconfiguring in due course Richmond Town Centre to be more effective as a shopping and staying location. It's also worth saying the elephant in the room, which is Twickenham will get a really significant shot in its arm with the completion of the Twickenham Riverside redevelopment project. And I hope very much that from a transport and wider point of view, that off the back of now being much closer to resolution, we will also be able to move on to second order improvements that we want to make in the wider Twickenham area. So more to be done and very much on our radar.
Okay, so this is, as you know, a community conversation. So we would like to hear if you have any responses to what you've heard. Firstly, from the lady who asked the question.
Thank you. Well, really just, I don't know, is there any longer term plans to turn some of the shops that have been empty for years into accommodation? Because we're told that there's a housing crisis and we need more housing. I mean, as I say, I mentioned what was a Burger King about 3 years ago. I don't know how feasible it is, but, you know, do you have plans of that sort, maybe?
Okay, well, we might be able to come back to that shortly. Is any more views on shops, businesses, town centres generally? Lady there.
My name is Victoria Nurse. Can I ask, what are you doing to ensure that anything you put into place in regards to like walking streets or anything ensures that disabled people are included into the conversation and accessibility? Because we can talk about Church Street all we want. I can't access most of the shops. Now I know from a friend that this was brought up in a previous meeting, and yeah, they weren't happy from what I heard about curbside service, but apparently there's a legal loophole that doesn't allow that. So, you know, curbside service doesn't work when it's raining. I'm just wondering, because we did have the DAGA, which is a disability advisory group for access, which for unknown reason has been stopped, even though that was such a key component within Richmond Council, because it was run by Richmond Council to ensure that there was a voice from experts, from disabled experts, not a bunch of people that, you know, stay in bed at home. And it's just like, you are missing out on a lot of expert voices in being able to tell you things that can be compromised on to ensure that access is given. I understand shops can't be changed and everything, but like new shops where they've got small steps that could be changed on Twickenham High Street, etc. There's no excuse for that, but the thing is, we no longer have a voice within the council to be able to give that feedback. And I'm just wondering if there's any way of that looked into to be reset up, because I've chased this for over 2 years with MPs and with councillors, and I've still had literally crickets, and I can hear them and I'm deaf. So I'm just wondering what you want to say to that.
Well, I'm going to bring in Nancy Baldwin, who's our communities and also equalities spokesperson. She may have a response.
Well, not so much a response, so much as I would love to get together with you, Victoria, and we'll talk some more about constituting that. One of the things that we're trying to do is that we're bringing in, we had an away day recently where I put everywhere, equalities is foundational, where we have to make sure that every single time we're thinking of a new building, a new service, or a new whatever, that we're thinking, can everyone access it? Can everyone make the best use of this as possible? So I can promise you that's a conversation that we have a lot and that we'll be doing more of. And it's certainly part of our nighttime strategy, which Councillor Geisler is in charge of. We have our Richmond Town Centre, Twickenham Riverside. We'll all be looking at those things. But I'll get together with you at the end of this, and you and I will talk personally. But I can promise you that is part of every single conversation that we have, is how can we make sure that everybody has equal access.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go live to our interactive display board here. Simon Garnett has a question. Now, if we can get Simon unmuted, he can ask it. Stand by, Simon.
Hi, well, I'm on a train, so I don't know how well you can hear me, but my question is about the space that is unused on the high street and whether there's an opportunity to turn that into community spaces for charitable purposes, particularly around the reuse and repair services.
Thank you. Because the sound was a touch distorted, Simon, because you're not here, you probably didn't recognise that you sounded like the great and mighty Wizard of Oz for a moment. And so the question online was on town centres. I'd be really interested to understand what the council can do about creating communal spaces in non-occupied building, in particular for charitable purposes such as reuse and repair premises that can serve the entire community. Is this something the council is able to do? Phil, are you looking at me?
I mean, I don't offer you any easy answers on this. It's Simon. I don't offer any easy answers on it. I would love to do more, and it's something, in fact, I'm keen to look at if we can do more in the next few months. We've had a few requests from cultural organisations and some community organisations about that very point. As I mentioned earlier, we have hit some barriers because very few of the buildings on our high streets are actually owned by the council. Where we do own them, of course, we do make a difference. So, of course, just literally 200 yards from here, we converted the old Achieving for Children building on the corner of York Street into Patch, which is a very, very successful community and business centre now, with over 200 businesses in there and also a big community space for people as well, and some voluntary organisations as well. So I think that's an example of what we can do. But the point I think you make is broader, that particularly on the high street and retail, what can we do to bring more charity organisations in? I'm going to try and learn from some of our other council colleagues on that. I know in Sutton they've been doing some good work in that area. I think it is an opportunity. I don't have any easy answers to it yet, but it's something we're definitely looking at in more detail.
One of the big problems that we have, of course, is just simply trying to track down who the owner of the building is, because quite often they're held through companies. We've got people based in the Cayman Islands who own properties in Twickenham and Richmond Town Centre. So trying to get them to take an interest from miles and miles away in a community which they have a business in or a site, but absolutely zero interest in terms of making it a thriving place to live, is one of the greatest challenges that we have in trying to free up and reuse empty spaces. Julian Eden-Watts has something she'd like to add.
Yes, well, the way you phrased the question, I think you talked about repair and reuse, which made me think of an initiative that our sustainability team at the council are working on, which is trying to identify a location in the borough where we could open up a circular economy hub. Basically, that's a place where different organisations and companies come together to break away from what we call a linear economy, where people buy a thing and then throw it away when it's done with. And instead of that, they use items in other ways, using waste as a resource to create something new, lots of partnerships and things being brought onto the site, being upcycled, parts being used for other things, all sorts of different things that you can imagine, items being reconditioned. We do need a location for it, and that's the stage that our officers are working on at the moment. You may have heard that in Acton, our colleagues up in Ealing are looking at doing this. They have more space available to do it, so we may be doing a sort of more smaller bespoke sort of thing in Richmond, but that is quite an exciting thing that we are looking at the moment.
Thank you. Are these relating to shops or relating to shop? No, well, we're on shops and high streets at the moment. So, no, this gentleman there, and then I'll come to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. My name is Peter Newbold. I live in Haggard Road. A question about the shops and this task of trying to fill these places which are vacant, as this lady said. And did you have a policy to try and maintain the existing shops? Churchstead, as one of the councillors said, is a great example of of a wonderful space, and the pedestrianisation has sort of confirmed that. But it is a sort of particularly choice place. Now, King Street and the main street in Richmond has less advantage in terms of perhaps amenity because of all the cars whizzing past. But you have a policy to preserve and support existing shops in, you know, with the gaps that we've seen in King Street, for example, as opposed to this idea of opening up new retail space, which is perhaps sometimes advantageous. But when these existing places are empty, do you have a policy to specifically support them, to fill them?
I mean, I think a policy is too strong a word in terms of, because we're not trying to, you know, make everything an aspect, but a few things that might help. One of the things is we are absolutely acutely aware of what I would say the local nature of a lot of our high streets. So, you know, it's not just Richmond Town Centre, Twickenham, you think of Teddington, you think of Whitney, you think of Hampton Hill, all of these places, which are almost like their own bespoke high streets. A lot of them are very much dependent upon local small businesses, local entrepreneurs. We really believe in them. And what I would say our policy is to really try and support them as much as we possibly can. So a lot of our advertising, our support, our promotional material, the money that we put into Christmas and high streets in general, it's about making sure that we give them the best possible chance. And the reason why that works is, of course, the more it's obviously it's good for those businesses, but it's also it's good economic sense. I mean, they tend to keep more money within the borough, they employ locally. You tend to find the supply chains are much more sustainable. So to that extent, we're very much keen on supporting it. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean subsidising businesses that get into trouble, because like any business, there'll be cycles, you know, and some entrepreneurs often want to give up and there's a vacancy and, you know, hopefully the shop gets filled as well. What we're also doing in that sense is we're also investing in the public realm. So investing in some of our streets in order to improve it. Gareth mentioned and Alex mentioned Church Street. We've also, of course, recently in East Twickenham done some work on the road to basically improve the pavement, put in trees, make the whole shopping experience more successful. We've got plans to put in other parts of our borough as well, around Teddington Broad Street, hopefully Hampton Wick, other areas as well. We've got designs in place as well. And we believe by doing that, that absolutely encourages our local businesses to thrive wherever it's possible. So I think in that sense, we're very supportive of our local businesses, but of course we're not going to kind of like force them to trade if they don't want to in the future as well. Hope that answers the question.
See the microphone as being gestured.
Maybe not.
No, it does, but it slightly clashes with what the councillor said, that the Twickenham Riverside will create a new flux, a new dynamism, and I think that's a rather quick a conclusion, an assumption to make, when in fact you're talking about some of the existing high streets and places which you are supporting. It sounds very good. I just don't want to hear these breezy assumptions that opening up new territory and new retail space will inevitably be beneficial for King Street, for example. That's my
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think it's fair to say that we do realise that there are problems in some of our areas. I mean, I think Alex made reference again to Richmond Town Centre, where I think the lanes are really successful in many cases. But, you know, you do look at George Street, and I think the lady earlier made a point about the number of vacancies, the number of big box stalls there. So you can't, there's not a one size fits all. There are areas that we do need interventions on. Clearly Riverside is another area as well. The King Street Association have done quite a lot on King Street actually to help brighten it up and to help hopefully. I know some of those vacant shops have actually been filled there as well. So it's not a one size fits all, and it's not about, you know, saying that there's one solution, i.e. local shops are absolutely everywhere. So, you know, I think there's a number of approaches we can take.
Before I bring in Julia, because there's some planning challenges which we have as well regarding this, but I do wish every now and again we forget to thank the officers who do an enormous amount of work in this particular sphere. And there are two officers, one of whom in particular is an absolute dynamo. She's here in the room this evening. It's Lorinda Friend, who does so much to support the individual high streets in this borough. If you have a Christmas event, if you have a Sunday fair, if you have a market going on, she will be there, often in her own time, making sure that the traders are looked after, making sure that the people are enjoying themselves, and testing the water of public opinion in a very informal way, but which gives back so much to not just the council, but to the borough as a whole. So it's thanks to Lorinda, it's thanks to Max for doing an enormous amount of work on that particular score. And on that note, I'm going to go over to Julia, who may just quickly canter through planning, if you can.
I'm allowed a quick canter. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on placemaking, which is a very local government word for the concept of trying to ensure that the places we live in are what we want them to be, pleasant, safe, with all the services and the retail opportunities and the vitality that we'd like to have. And through our planning policy work, we try to ensure that the areas for retail and services are quite tightly drawn around our town centres. I think this touches on the point the gentleman made about, you know, what do you do about the places in between, and the lady down here, I think, also referring to that. So we're trying to be intelligent in our response through our planning policies to be more relaxed about releasing retail to other uses, particularly residential. In some areas that will work better. It will bring people in and provide much needed housing. And in other ways, we will be more resistant to that sort of change because we want to make sure we preserve opportunities for businesses and vitality in our town centres and local centres. So that's the quickest counter I've ever done on planning.
Very good. Very good. It's what we like. Gentleman in the back, sort of middle, got his hand up there. Splendid. Thank you.
I was just going to ask, what does the council opinion with regard to sale of council assets? Instead of, say, selling them for the highest price, could they not be better used within the community? These are community, for instance, police stations, for example. Teddington police station being one particular one which I know, which could be used locally for local use, but in fact, it was being promoted for the highest bid.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to bring in Councillor Brown, who's in addition to being the money man, is our property guy. And then I'm going to bring in Jim, who will wax lyrical about how it all should be housing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think broadly we would agree. So certainly on Teddington Police Station, we have very much been campaigning along with Madeira. It's not a council asset, Teddington Police Station. That is owned by the mayor. So we absolutely agree. And you may be aware, Madeira has actually managed to get the law changed now so that the Metropolitan Police can't now hide behind this concept of fiduciary duty and that they've got to get the maximum value. So she's actually now injected into that decision-making process for the mayor the idea that social value does have to be taken into account. In terms of disposing of council assets, in my time, most of the sites that we've disposed of have all been for affordable housing. So we have tended to partner with RHP or PA, and they've been for 100% affordable. So we've, that's an example of that would be the Strathmore site opposite Stanley School in Fulwell. We've got the Mearway site, we've got Meadows Hall site. These are all council-owned sites, which are now being converted into 100% affordable, not even part private, part affordable, because we know there's just such a shortage of sites in the borough that you know, for affordable housing. So where we can help with our own sites, we're doing that. We've literally just announced a project with Whitton Community Centre, very highly valued community centre, but in a state of, you know, quite severe disrepair, being propped up at the back. So it's going to be quite a complicated project, but basically the idea is we're going to re-provide the community centre on the ground floor, and we're going to put a number of affordable housing units on top. So we absolutely want to make use of the sites that we own as a council to promote the sort of community benefit where we can. There are, when we come to, let's say, lease out council sites, we do have to think quite carefully about following set procurement rules. We do have obligations to make sure we achieve best value when we're letting out council properties. So we can't just simply allocate council properties to a favoured community organisation or someone that we happen to know and like. We have to have proper processes. We have to allow people to tender for them. So we can, for example, allocate a property to be for community purposes, but then we allow different community groups, if that makes sense, to bid for it, to see which ones come up with the best and most compelling offer.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you very much. Jim, do you wish to add a bit about housing?
Well, just quickly, I think Robin's talked very well in detail about housing, what we've done since 2018 when we took control of the council. We've quadrupled the pipeline of genuinely affordable homes that are going to be delivered. And one of the key ways we've done that is by identifying council sites that can be used for 100% affordable housing. Of course, we're not resting on our laurels, and we need to continue to look forward, to continue to grow that pipeline. Because since the cost of living crisis has hit us and the troubles with the economy have hit this country, just in Richmond, the number of families who have come to us for homelessness support and are being housed by the council in temporary accommodation has doubled for over 600 families, many of whom aren't able to be housed anywhere near the borough because of the severe shortage of available rented accommodation. And it's a real crisis. You know, I speak to families who's having to take their children on an hour and a half journey to school every day, travelling more than 10 miles to school each way. I mean, you're trying to recover from a really, you know, life-altering shock and crisis like homelessness. Having to take out 3 hours a day to get your children to and from school is not what's needed. We need to act as a council and as a community, because we've got to continue to really think creatively together about how we can continue to find places to provide better temporary accommodation within the borough, because that's the right thing to do. It's morally right. And we want to ensure that housing remains as fair as it can be and perhaps becomes even fairer in Richmond. It's a wonderful place to live. We all know that, and that's reflected in the cost of land and the cost of mortgages and the cost of rent. So we continue to look at all our property. I can see Gareth eagerly looking at me to find out. I think this is a marvellous speech, and it's very
good.
But he wants to crack on, I know. So I will wind that up. But just to say, we continue to look across all opportunities, across all council property, and we will be trying to be creative and asking you as a community to join us in being creative and making those leaps to make this a fairer borough.
Thank you so much. We're going to, I've been told we've got 2 hands raised in the virtual sphere. We've got Tony first. Tony, is this about high streets and similar?
Yes, this is about high streets, and it's about, it's really thanking the officers and councillors for turning up to an exciting meeting we had in Bullen Hall some months ago, which was to do with endorsing plans that have been drawn up by the council for creating a piazza in Hampton Wick that promises to add footfall to the high street and to make the rental properties there more attractive to those who want to open businesses. So it's not so much a question except to say we're excited and looking forward to this happening, and we'd love to know when it's going to happen. That's perhaps where the question
The $64 million question. When is it going to happen? It's on the. It will be work happening soon. Robin,
Phil could talk.
Phil.
Yes, Tony. Thanks for that. And yes, I mean, obviously, the way we've done this is we've put together some really nice looking high street schemes, which have got a lot of support in the community and a lot of support for ward councillors across the borough, which is great. I'm looking at 2 of the ward councillors now. Of course, they're now being costed up, and we've got some of the schemes already in hand. They do tend to take longer to put into place than perhaps some of the times that we hope, but that's because we're quite ambitious in what we want to create. And I think that's actually very good. And we're learning as a council as we get this done. Of course, the key challenge we've got now is making sure we can allocate the capital to put these schemes into place. So we're about to put the new schemes. We've got money for existing schemes. We're about to put the new schemes, and one of the ones you mentioned in Hampton Wick, into the capital funnel for discussion coming up and prioritisation. So I would simply say watch this space.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Gordon. Then there's a guy that's been beckoning me at the back, and then we're going to move on off this particular subject. Fascinating, as it undoubtedly is. Just unmuting Gordon now.
You're trying to talk to me.
You paid good money for that in the 60s. Could maybe Gordon write his question in the chat? And then we'll go to the man who's at the back, who was sort of waving. There we are, there we are. And then we'll come back to Gordon's question if we've got time. Floor's yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Penny Goodall, with regard to Teddington, you've done the paving beautifully in Richmond, in Twickenham, nothing in Teddington. It's a disgrace. And quite frankly, it's amazing how many school children go down Church Road, 3 schools, all junior, trip over. In the high street, trees stick up in the paving. The little squares which are used aren't paving stones at all. They're little tablets. It is a disgrace. You're going to spend money on Broad Street. I would suggest the money is put into the paving of the whole of Broad Street, High Street, Church Road. Then shops will have enhanced footfall. When you can't walk down there, you don't get footfall.
Thank you for that. What I will do is I'll make sure that that comment goes back to your 3 ward councillors and they will pick it up with you. If you can leave your contact details at the front desk before you leave, I'll make sure that they're shared with your 3 ward councillors. Did we get anything from Gordon? Unfortunately not. Sorry, Gordon. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on, I think, because we've really done high streets and what have you to death. So we're moving on to the next subject. This lady has been beckoning. I know what she wants to talk about. Please, question rather than a speech.
I'm talking to Gareth Roberts.
Hello.
How do you justify taking the lease away from Pensford Field Environmental Trust Committee with no consultation and just donating it to another institution, when I know that, for example, the ukulele band had booked the field to have rehearsal, and this other institution came marching up and told them to get out because it was her day, and they turned around and said, "I'm sorry, we're doing our rehearsal." So it shows that the new people will not use the field as a community field, which is what it is. And the field's had several merits and awards for the work they've done. And in fact, Kew Garden Station gardener, the head gardener, hadn't been in Pensford Field. And I met her today and she said how fantastic the field is. And it should be open for everyone, except sadly, she won't be able to go in and look at it once the lease is given to somebody else because they're very exclusive.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I will answer it directly. That's not the case. It's not the case that there will be a cessation of community use in Pensford Field. What we have at the moment is a lease which has got a couple of more years to run. And we would have had, we've been looking for a new home for Dose of Nature, which is a well-respected mental health therapeutic provision. They're not well recognised, they're nationally recognised for the work that they do. And we risked the potential of losing Dose of Nature from the borough altogether, which would have meant a degradation of mental health services for residents who live right here and may have seen them going off, to very far flung afield places rather than being able to access those facilities here. Now, no lease has been drawn up yet. So the idea that people will not be allowed in simply isn't true because no lease has been drawn up. And we will be making sure that community use is part of the new lease. We will be making sure that community access is part of the new lease. We'll be making sure that the school at Darrow School, that they will be able to access the site as they do already. And we will be making sure that the council's ecology and parks team will be working very closely with Dose of Nature in order to ensure that the high standards of ecological, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of it. Conservation, that's it. Thank you. That those high standards will be maintained. And what I would like to do, listen, it's not been handled very well. I'll give you that. It could have been better notice. And I have written to the trust apologising for that, offering my personal apology. Unfortunately, sometimes things go wrong as a council. We could have handled it better, but for me, the prize is to ensure that we can make sure that this is still a community-based facility, but we keep a really top-notch mental health provision right here in the borough. Because let's not forget, following COVID, we are in the middle of a mental health crisis. And we need to make sure that we've got as many facilities as possible for local people, particularly young people, to access to help them get through it. Yes, of course, you need the microphone back. You need the microphone back, because otherwise the people at home won't be able to hear.
I would like to ask, what do you intend to do about the current committee who've been working tirelessly to make this place look wonderful for wildlife? There are all sorts of wildflowers that you have to know what you're doing, like ragwort. If you don't tell your volunteers to wear gloves, you can absorb toxins that affect your liver.
Yeah, nasty stuff.
And that would fall at your feet.
Well, it would.
Yes, it would. But this woman knows nothing about nature. She's never turned up for any of the work days.
Well, let's not get into individuals, shall we? Because she's not here to
All
defend
right,
herself.
the institution.
The institution.
None of them have turned up. And I'm afraid everybody in Kew is really upset. And there are going to be a lot of angry people.
Again?
I'm sure you've had letters. In fact, you haven't answered mine.
No, because
You've had so many.
No, it's not that I've had so many. I've had some. Certainly, I've had some.
No, I'm sure you've had a lot.
10. About that.
Perhaps they didn't send them directly to you.
Well, no, but a moment ago
you. To the council in general.
But the thing is, I've also had letters from people saying, "Good move, absolutely good move." I was in Kew just on the weekend, and somebody said, "I've heard about this, right thing to do." You're never going to please everybody. What, in terms of, have I had the chance to reply to you? No, because I wanted to reply to the trust first. I thought it was a good taste thing to do. And then I will be getting around to replying to those 10 or 15 emails which I've had. In terms of the committee, as part of the letter which I've sent to them, I've offered to broker a meeting between them and Dose of Nature to see how we can make arrangements going forward if they would still like to be involved.
Can I say something slightly controversial?
Yeah, well,
because
you did ask before, but go on.
Because these people work with nature, they're easily bullied. And because this other person has a very strong personality.
Again, let's not strain to individuals.
Well, they are highly offended, and one of them is actually quite ill from being upset.
Okay, well, I'm very sorry to hear that. However, the meeting which will be brokered, I would be there, and I'm quite used to dealing with bullies.
Well, I said my piece, but Hugh is very upset.
Does anybody else wish to talk? I mean, we're getting into parks management to an extent, but there's a person right at the very back, the lady there. She's got her hand raised.
Diana Dunn Russell. I am a trustee of Pensford Field Environment Trust, and I would like to endorse everything that the previous speaker has said. This decision has been taken by the council, who have been in conversation with Dose of Nature for several months and took this decision in July. We were only informed in September. None of the local community was consulted. None of the schools who use the field for their forest school have been consulted. I believe that the council and all my fellow trustees believe that the council have acted both unconstitutionally and in the most appalling manner. There are many greenfield sites in the borough which are maintained by voluntary groups. We save the council thousands and thousands of pounds every year. And for the council to treat us in this way, giving us 1 month's notice after 32 years custodianship of the field, I think is utterly deplorable.
Thank you. Any further to do with parks, open spaces? Gentleman there with the glasses.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ilya, and I'm a local engineer in one of the hotel, and I would like to raise my concern regarding the condition of the rails on the terrace field, the listed rails.
Yep.
White color. So I already spoke to garden department or planning committee, maybe to Tasha or someone, and it seems my proposal was just listening, and really want to deliver not just information about this poor condition of rails, but the solution, how to make it properly forever, because there are a lot of details, how difficult to weld the steel to iron, cast iron, and if I can get contact if I can take a conversation about these details, it will be great. And I just was informed which contractor already have been allocated for this work, but I'm worried about it gonna be one additional attempt to just welding these rails rather than make it properly. So if I can get any contact.
If you speak to me afterwards, give me your details and I'll make sure that they're putting to the right hands.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. Very useful. Anything further on fields? Yes. All parks? All railings? Bandstands? We'll take bandstands if we have it.
Yes, I wanted to ask about, I gather there's a site in Grimwood Road that Dose of Nature have been using. I wonder if you could elaborate what Grimwood Road is and if it's a possible place for, would be suitable for Dose of Nature to use more often.
Nancy, do you want to ask about Grimwood? Grimwood was looked at. Various places were looked at. But Grimwood, we can find out about Grimwood.
Hi. Yes, Grimwood Road is out for bids now from various community groups. It hasn't been used for Dose of Nature. It's too small a site, really, for the sort of work that they do in terms of, I beg pardon? The size of someone's backyard, basically. It's not a very big site. It's quite a small site. So it wouldn't be suitable for taking people on nature walks or things of that nature. It's got a glass house on it and a few growing fields. So it's not really appropriate for that sort of thing. So, but we are hoping to get some community gardening going there. And we have a variety, I can't say who has put proposals forward to maybe take over the site and work with it, but that's happening right now.
Thank you. Anyone more on? Oh, yes, Carol. Oh, yes, sorry.
But if it's about nature walks and things, surely if they had a small plot somewhere, they would take people into Bushy Park, Richmond Park, Kew Gardens. There are so many areas that people wanting to go on nature walks could go on.
Indeed, there are. Various rural parks were looked at. I understand that there was an investigation as to whether an arrangement could be made with Kew. We looked at our own municipal parks. We looked and looked and looked. Believe me, we don't take these decisions lightly. Carol.
Okay. In Hampton Hill, you've done a lot of work there, making it look much nicer. Templeton Place, in particular, there are some nice coloured seats, but there are also several planting boxes, which I understand you have a contract with someone to plant in them. They're full of weeds and they're an absolute disgrace. We did wonder whether anybody could adopt, an organisation could adopt one of the boxes to keep it up and keep nice flowers there. But it is a disgrace, and yet they could be beautiful.
I'm hearing Julie Needham saying, yes, next to me, sotto voce, and I'm going to allow her to take this one.
Yeah, I think it's sensible that we look at different ways which we can manage those things better. I'm happy to chat to you after, or you leave your details and we can follow that up. And that's probably going to be some sort of liaison with town centres and parks and making sure the right sorts of things are planted and that there's someone on hand to maintain them if necessary. I don't know whether there's a local business association or some kind of, you know, athletic group who might whiz through Hampton Hill and, you know, quick people out the weeds or something on a Friday evening. There's various things we can look at. So thank you very much for that suggestion.
Okay, before I bring Nancy Baldwin in, who's clearly got the microphone bug this evening now, do start thinking questions about education, because my friend Penny here has been sat here very patient. Nothing about schools or kids so far. So I'm going to bring Nancy, then I've got the guy down the middle of the...
I love the fact that somebody wants to do boxes of plants and things. One of the things that we have here at the council is something called the Community Rail Partnership, and all the various rail stations that we have, quite small ones. I live near the North Sheen one, but there's Hampton Wick and everything. And we're looking for groups of people who want to beautify these places and, you know, particularly keen gardeners. So you see them at Richmond Station, you see them at Twickenham Station, but our smaller stations don't necessarily have anything like that. So if that's of any particular interest to anyone in the room, please do get in touch with me. That would be great. Because we're really working hard with Southwest Rail and Network Rail now to get places like this looking better and having the opportunity for people who like gardening to do gardening.
There we are. Gentlemen there. Oh, I see a lady at the back as well.
Graham Chamber, Councillor Roberts, something close to your heart. Moving on now to law and order.
Oh, no, Mr. Druper, we're not moving on from this site yet, because there are still hands of people who wish to answer about parks and floral tributes. We'll come to law and order. Promise you we will. Well, I should have a bell to, you know, like Robert Robertson on the old Call My Bluff thing. We're moving on to the next subject. Lady there.
Hello, I'm not sure if I'm in the right section of your conversation at the moment, but I'd like to discuss Ducks Walk.
Oh, that sounds like a law and order issue to me.
Right.
Give me a sec. Give me a sec.
It's law and order. I think it's to do with the what's happening down there. But if I wait, do you want me to wait?
If you wouldn't mind, because you know,
all right, no problem.
See, I'm the one that gets the emails. Anybody wants to say anything more about parks, etc., etc.? Anybody online? Is Robert there? And Helena? We will come to you, Mr. Druper, I promise. Is this about parks and stuff, Robert? Yep. How about Helena?
Sorry, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Hello.
Hi, it's Helena. Can I ask a very quick question about Bushy Park and the access? It's just, I know it's a royal park, so I don't think the council has a say, but I understand that and apologies if you've already covered this because I came in late, but is there, I noticed in Richmond Park that they closed all the access off and then they opened it on certain days, and that sometimes the build-up of traffic going into Kingston and the other is very bad, and also nobody seems to be looking at the potholes in that road going between Kingston Bridge and Hampton Court, and the traffic coming down, I think it's Church Grove, to the roundabout when you have to come that way rather than going through the park. Has anybody thought about doing a light that goes right so that it alleviates the traffic that builds up down that road, which must be quite annoying to the residents?
Yeah, Alex, for that.
Yeah, I mean, just very quick point on some of those, but I think if on the specific, the third point that you raised, I mean, obviously, feel free to email me and I'll look into the matter. In general, though, as you say, the Bushy Park changes and indeed changes to Richmond Park made by Royal Parks, the council did evaluate traffic movements in and around the park area as a result of the changes. And those conclusions were discussed at a Transport Committee some time back. So I would encourage you, and if you can't find them, to look at them on the website and take a read of those. And if not, I'm happy to send the details across to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I allowed it. It was technically about parks. We're going to move on. Ting. Mr. Juba.
Thank you. Yes, something close to your heart, law and order. You probably are aware of many of my communications trying to help John at the back there, and our local police in terms of a station in Richmond town centre, which everybody agrees needs to happen now. What I kind of want to know, Councillor Roberts, is what further conversations have you had in recent times? The feedback I get from Chris Scammell and others is that it's kind of, and your own council team, is that there is kind of a lot of toing and froing in terms of the council trying to help the police find a location. The estate teams for the police supposedly playing a part, but at the moment we're a year on since the conversation started. I found the place at the back of the new House of Fraser building, courtesy of the guys that have developed that. Nothing happened there. It got dismissed in the end. We're not looking for a full-blown police station, but an office somewhere for John and his team to be there in the centre. What's your latest? What have you kind of gathered recently? And another thing to discuss is e-bikes. E-bikes in general, but e-bikes for the police team.
We'll come back to e-bikes. We all sort of went hard line bikes. And right, police station, Richmond. Lovely. There is a thing for those people who don't know. It's an office, part of the Mayor of London's Police and Crime Committee and the Metropolitan Police. They have got what they're calling an estates strategy. They have been drawing up the estates strategy for 4 years. I was at City Hall today and we were talking about it as part of the budget process setting, and I asked them, how long has this been going on? 4 years they've been trying to get an estate strategy. The original strategy was that they would flog off all of the police stations and all of the surplus to requirement pieces of land and make themselves a fast buck because they weren't getting any money from central government to fund the police properly. Then we had all of the, well, let's call it unpleasantness recently. And then we had Mark Rowley came in and promised a return to frontline community-based policing. The problem is that having promised a return to frontline community-based policing, which I am fully supportive of, by the way, they then looked around and said, well, where are we going to put all of these police? So we're going to be in our front line, and found that they sold off all the police stations. Now, the problem that we have is that because City Hall are dragging their feet hugely on coming up with the estate strategy, we find, as was mentioned earlier, Teddington Police Station, which could net a capital receipt for the Mayor of London, which could go for community use, which could go for bringing in some houses, could be all sorts of things. It wouldn't be the capital receipt that he would want. Nevertheless, it will be a capital receipt generated here in this borough that could then be used to purchase a small office, as you suggest, for Richmond Town Centre. However, that sort of joined up thinking doesn't seem to exist in City Hall at the moment. Maybe now I'm there, it will. But this is the problem that we have. I mean, people say, why doesn't the council buy it? Well, it's really not our place to be buying police stations for people. You already pay for the police through your council tax. You already pay for the police through your general taxation. The idea that you as taxpayers should be asked to pay more out of your council tax to fund other people's responsibilities is really not something that we should be countenancing. We should be insisting that MOPAC and the Met get this. It's not the local police, by the way, I should stress. It's the central team. It's the estates team at the Met. They need to get their acts sorted out. I'm fully supportive of a base in central Richmond, and hopefully we will get one but I wouldn't, hold your breath on it because they've not moved quickly so far. But we will keep making the case, as I know indeed will you.
But is there any? You're right. The estates team they don't seem interested in reality because it's all about money, and they don't have the budget. So therefore, it always keeps coming back again to that elephant in the room, that there isn't any money. And my only view, which I've communicated to you and others, is I'm not saying that the council should help fund a police station as such, but again, a little bit more lateral thinking, working with local business people, people who own properties, trying to come up with a game plan where there is, okay, maybe you will have to put your hands in your pocket and find a little bit of money to help. I don't know, but some lateral thinking to create an environment we can have in our town centre, a place for John and his team to be able to have his officers there available to quickly, instead of having to come all the way here from Twickenham, going on a bus, go back again to e-bikes. If there can be some help to support the e-bikes, that may be. I just would like to see some more. It's very easy, which I understand, Councillor Roberts, it's very easy to say that other people are holding this up, but we're not talking big bucks here. We're not talking a full-blown station.
No, we're not. However, my counterback would be do it for Richmond Town Centre. Then I'll have Teddington residents on my back saying, can you fund us as well? Then I'll have Hampton residents saying, can you fund us? I'll have Barnes residents, can you fund us? I will have every town in the borough. And suddenly, small amounts become a big amount. So we need to make sure that it's the people who are responsible for funding these things who fund them, not the council stepping in. Because what next? A doctor's surgery, a local health centre, a chemist, all of the things that people want in their local area. We can't fund everything. It's the people who should be funding things that should have the responsibility for funding them, not the council.
That's fair enough. In that case, then I guess it does come down to yourself now that you're on the GLA. And congratulations there of putting that pressure on.
We will.
Really putting it on. We pay, as you say, a lot of money for policing in London, and we don't get our share.
Thank you, Mr. Juba. Now, I saw another hand waving. Is this on policing matters? Gentleman there. Then there's the Ducks Walk, but I've not forgotten about Ducks Walk.
With regard to police stations, same situation in Teddington is happening in Notting Hill. I have been involved in that. We put a plan together in order to provide a financially successful plan for that, which gave opportunity for a police station and community asset. And they've been held up by City Hall, right, all the way down the line. It's absolutely a disgrace.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the same thing is can happen in Teddington, right? And I just don't think it's funny. And I think that it's time somebody got off their backside and did something about it.
No, I agree with you. I mean, just very quickly, and I'm going to bring everybody in. I'm starting to enjoy the sound of my own voice. I appreciate it's not a widely held view. But Jim was mentioning earlier about the need for temporary accommodation and affordable housing. We've got people living in a temporary accommodation in far-flung places because we cannot free up sites such as Teddington Police Station to provide much-needed affordable housing in this borough. The knock-on consequences of the lack of action from City Hall are manifold. And I'll leave it here.
Also, by using community asset, you reduce the bill to the social service. Those people become profitable, beneficial to society.
I agree. I've got Phil Giesler wishes to come in on this.
Yeah, and just on, in fact, talking more as a ward councillor, just to build on what you're saying, we are actually on Teddington, we're being as proactive as we can, because exactly as you say, we've in fact convened conversations. So we've obviously we've got housing providers who provided designs for us in terms of social housing. We've got the doctor's surgery on board in terms of what they would like to do. We've even had conversations with NHS in the region in Kingston. The point we make about community health partnership, is also very key to that, because we want to make sure that we can link in the doctor's surgery, community facilities, and maybe even provide a small office for the police in Teddington as well. So we're well advanced in terms of the plans for all of that. And I think the reason we're trying to be proactive is exactly as I think certain speakers were saying. I've learnt out of this as well, by the way, that all the ducks have to line up. No one prioritises anything unless there is money there or designs there. And trying to convene something like the council, the housing provider, the NHS, the police, to get everything together at once, it's quite a complicated task, I tell you. But we are being as proactive as we can with the designs, looking at prices, looking at what it looks like. But as Gareth has said, the elephant in the room is the decision about disposal, because at the moment we haven't got a clear red light to dispose. So
thank you, Phil. Is this about policing and similar?
Chair of the Hampton Wick and Teddington's Police Liaison Group. Could you just be clear then, Phil, what's the current policy in respect of the former Teddington Police Station with regards to the police and having a facility there?
So policy is too strong a word, Robert. What we've done in terms of convening is is exactly as I was just saying. So we think the facility can be used for 1, social housing, 2, the doctors, potentially pharmacy. We'll see how that all runs, and also community health. We have discussed the needs for the officers of what they might need. Their view is they don't need an awful lot on the ground, but they would like to have some space. And indeed, the conversations we've had with the various other providers suggest that is entirely possible. And if we can do that, we would be able to move them into that rather than the little place they've got in Bushy Park at the moment, which isn't much good. So it's our desire to do that. And I think all the interested parties can align on that. But the key thing is, as I said, Robert, is unless the building is sold to us in that sense, we can't really move ahead with that kind of plan. But it would be ideal to do it.
Possibly what the other piece, I think, what might be is what the policy is from the police, from MOPAC's point of view.
Yeah.
Their input into this is they're saying they don't want a base for their police intelligence, which isn't very helpful.
It isn't helpful.
You can just ignore them. I think the police in Teddington would like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. I've been told we've got a couple of questions in the online version about crime. Matthew. Is Matthew there still? Just whilst we're waiting for Matthew to come on, I think it's worth reiterating that we are the safest borough in the safest BCU in the entirety of London. And whilst I appreciate that people have got a fear of crime, that the crime figures are low in comparison with lots of other places. So this isn't to dismiss people's fears, it's not to dismiss people's concerns, but our police do a very good job locally in keeping us all safe, and they should be commended for doing so. Matthew, are you there? No. The interactive element this evening is not working very well. I'm looking for one more. I'm not forgetting Duxmore. I'm going to go to Duxmore now, even though at the very height of the beginning of this conversation, I said, let's try to avoid hyper-specific issues. And I feel one is hoving into view, but we've got time.
Good evening and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
The reason I'm interested in Ducks Walk is because my road enters Ducks Walk. And of course, Ducks Walk is not just Ducks Walk. It starts from Richmond Bridge to Twickenham Bridge. It encompasses Willoughby Road and Ducks Walk. Now, the problem that we have is that Ducks Walk is now being used as a well, always has, but as a thoroughfare between the two bridges, and people come from miles away on their bikes, etc. Now, the problem is that Ducks Walk is not well looked after. The vegetation is very bad, and alongside Ducks Walk, there is a hedge. Now, that hedge has been a major problem for not only the council, the police and the locals, because the hedge is owned by 3 different components, which partly is the council, partly is private, and nobody seems to look after it. Now it's a danger where people walk at night, they can, and perpetrators can actually hide within that hedge. And also the problem is that we now have these very dangerous bikes, the electric bikes, the electric scooters that come up and down at huge speed down Duxwell, and that we can't control and nobody else can. So people are in great danger. Now that area around 1 Duxwell is really dangerous because A, the lighting is very bad. And B, because the vegetation is not cut back, it reduces the width of that area, making it very difficult for people to come past with pushchairs and electric motor bikes. Now, the thing is, we need to get that sorted. The problem is the councillors are saying that it's the council's problem. The police is saying that it's your problem. We have Munira who says that, it's something else. Nobody is taking this on board, and we really need it sorted before long, before somebody gets very badly hurt down there. So can you have a look at that, please?
Julia is about to respond.
Good.
As I speak. Julia first, then Alex.
Yes, as one of your local councillors, indeed a resident of East Twickenham, and the environment lead and therefore parks and so on are sort of in my domain. I'll take that one on the chin. I know it's got a bit lush over there. It does every year. This is an ongoing thing, and it's not a sort of fix it once. So yes, we do need to get the vegetation sorted out. And I know that in the past, the parks team have been pretty good about coming and talking to the chair of the Residents Association and other residents. And I was writing an email earlier today, actually, just on that subject. And I think that would be sensible to get together on site and make sure everyone understands which bits of hedge we're talking about. And I know also in the past, the enforcement team at the council have written letters to the private landowners who own some of the hedge. And it is a bit messy. We need to, forgive me, get our ducks in a row a little bit on who's responsible for which hedge. On the question of the bicycles, I think that's perhaps more appropriately addressed by Alex, who deals with the transport side of things.
And also the signs that need to be changed and the chicanes that need to be added.
So look, I'm not going to try and make all the determinations on that this evening, but the issue is known to me and to through ward councillors. I think what is fair to say, though, is first of all, I think we just need to promote a little bit more conservatism in some of the language here. I mean, e-bikes, for example, particularly rental e-bikes, which and we may come on to, have a maximum speed of 15.5 miles an hour if they're legal e-bikes. Now, there's a separate question about illegal e-bikes and scooters, which is sadly a matter on which the council have very little power. That is a policing matter. The specific location has, from memory, at least 2, maybe 3 chicaned barriers. And I can't think of any other stretch in the borough that has that level of control over the access to cyclists and pedestrians. And so, to be frank, I would need some, on behalf of the committee, some very thorough persuading that the solution to this is yet more restriction. We heard earlier from the lady who spoke earlier about disability access. Every time we place these types of chicanes, we place restrictions for the disabled in wheelchairs and in non-standard bicycles. One of the things we will look at, and I know I've been speaking to your local ward councillors, whether signing and lining can be made more prominent. What I would just emphasise, though, at the risk of sort of saying how limited an impact that might have, is that people who cycle in inappropriate ways are very likely the people who are least going to take notice of signage. And in reality, we're dealing with people who are not dreadfully considerate, and they are a very hard audience to deal with.
So what do you suggest?
Well, I suggest that you have an awful lot of controls there already. I don't believe more of the same is the solution. We'll look at additional signage and measures, but I do not support additional barriering in that location.
Thank you. any more? Oh, ladies in the back. Hello. Hello, microphone.
Am I allowed another question?
Of course, Liberty Hall here.
This is to do with, I guess, air quality. One part of it, I walk through central Twickenham every morning on the way to work, and I cross over at the main sort of crossroads that Cross Deep comes down to, what is it, Heath Road, York Street, all over. And there's a long queue of traffic from all the way along Cross Deep, and yet there's very little traffic coming. I mean, this is around 9:30 when I walk there. I'm just wondering if you could do something about traffic lights, alteration, changing when they, how much traffic they let through, because it seems that, you know, as I say, a huge amount of traffic down Cross Street, but not much coming the other way. So it doesn't seem that's a for me personally as a pedestrian, that's an air quality thing. The other thing is I just wondered whether you have any say at all over Mogden. And the sometimes, frankly, stench that comes from it. I know there's supposed to be measures put in place to reduce the smell from Mogden over the years, but it's still, maybe I'm very sensitive to it, but to my mind, it quite often smells. And I live in sort of, well, I'm in Park Road, so it's not that close to Mogden at all, but it's. As soon as I drive back into Twickenham, I can open the window and smell it.
Okay, so two different types of air quality there.
So I mean, so on the signals in general and on that specific, signals are not in the council's direct control. We can make representations, but Transport for London are responsible for the phasing and the administration of that. I think we are, however, undertaking a piece of work that's been under quite a considered period of work around Cross Deep, and I think there are potential changes to the Cross Deep arrangements that may well have some positive impacts, not on the crossing itself. The only thing I'd just say on Mogden, although I know Julia is going to touch on it, as a ward councillor for the neighbouring ward to Mogden, and as someone who lives far enough away almost to be able to see Mogden, you know, to use the Sarah Palin expression, do I know Alaska? I can see it from my window. I can see Mogden from my window. I have to say the smell has gotten worse. Genuinely has gotten worse, and I think that doesn't exactly sit in at odds with Thames Water's general competence.
Thank you. I don't have a particularly convincing answer for you on Mogden, but your feedback is really helpful to know that in Amiens Park Road that you're experiencing sort of malodorous moments. We do get invited, I think it's the ward councillors closest to the border there with council get invited to liaison meetings at Mogden. And we also have, I mean, I have a sort of relationship with, you know, my counterpart in Hounslow, and that's something that I'm very happy to take up with her, because I know that she hears a lot from her residents about the odour from Mogden. So thank you for the feedback. I think it's really helpful to hear from people how far away from Mogden they're experiencing issues, and particularly if it's getting worse or if there are particular times or weather, you know, weather situations that make it worse. So maybe we have a chat at the end, if that's all right.
Just to say very quickly, I thought it would be sort of in the summer but actually even in cold weather sometimes it's really bad. So I really don't know what they're doing there. But it's, well, I do know what they're doing.
They're not doing it very well.
It doesn't seem to be any particular type of weather.
No. Okay, I'm going to a quick shout out for air quality issues. I will ask, of course, I've asked before, I'll ask again, anybody about schools or children's services, just to keep Penny pleased, or any subject. So, I've got two. So what I'll do is, it was neck and neck. I'm going to go to the gentleman with the glasses and I'll come to you. We've got about half an hour. We'll be able to get both done. So this gentleman here.
Thanks. Hello, my name's Pete Kane and it's a transport question, so it'll be for Alex predominantly. I live in Sherland Road. It's to do with events, particularly the rugby. Obviously, everything gets shut around there, and I'm sure it has been posed before, but I just want to understand why. St Mary's Terrace isn't opened to allow a flow into Richmond because we're all being sent back, which increases the traffic on Heath Road and Richmond Road. So I wondered, has that ever been considered?
It's certainly not been considered by me. It's not something that's come to me. I think I'd need a little more detail to be able to. So I know the roads you mentioned.
Yeah, it's got the barrier.
Are you suggesting the opening of the barrier on Mary's Terrace?
I am.
Right. Well, I think that would need very careful consideration because barriers like that are obviously introduced for a good reason. And I suspect that many residents would have quite serious concerns about the reopening of that road.
Yeah, but it would alleviate the congestion that is.
Yeah, but all I'm simply saying is, look, we can take it away and take a look at it, but I am certain that a barrier would be introduced with good reason. Ward council, I'm sure, would be very familiar with the rationale for its historic.
Well, that would just be to do with it being a rat run in general.
Sure, and that is yeah, and that would be a specific reason for not opening it, because to be clear, while there may be congestion on principal roads, that's where the traffic should be, and frankly, not running through residential backwater streets.
Yeah, well, I don't agree.
Well, I can't agree with everybody all the time, I'm afraid.
Some would have.
And just a semi-related point, and you've already said that TfL deal with the traffic lights, but the traffic lights that run up from there from Railway Approach, there's a traffic light by the Cabbage Patch.
Yes.
When that goes green, the traffic on London Road is not stopped. That is still that's a live road with a green light coming onto it. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's something that we can take that
I understand you're having a meeting with TfL, so I would appreciate if that was brought up because.
Could you drop an email to him about it, because we're talking now, but it's easy for something just to, and he can add it to the.
Yeah, I don't recognise it. So please, if you can set up the detail, I'd be happy to look.
Okay.
Lovely. Thank you so much, gentlemen behind, and then I believe we have somebody online who wishes to ask at long last about education or children's services. Perhaps not, we shall see. Sir.
Hi, my name's Clive Osborne. Really, following on from what the lady said over there, I don't think you listen to the people of this borough. I think you're a very authoritarian regime. You've got your policies and you will force them to the people of this borough, whether they like it or not. I got involved in the 20-mile-an-hour limits. And you had a large-scale consultation that must have cost the taxpayers quite a lot of money. And 10,000 people replied to it across the borough. And a majority across the borough said that they did not want 20-mile-an-hour limits on main roads across. In my ward, which is Whitton, 71.6% of the people there said that they did not want it. As it was, I heard that you were going to force this through the council. So I got to go to the council meeting and speak. I was told that there would be 3 people speaking for it and 3 people speaking against it. When I turned up on the day, you rigged it so that you had 5 people speaking for it, and I was the only person speaking against it. When I was speaking, there were people sort of cheering in the background. I went over to them afterwards and they said, we wanted to speak against it. We were told we couldn't speak. It went to the council meeting, you've got a majority on the council and you forced it through. Where I live, we have, you've enforced permit parking on us. Under previous regimes, we were asked whether we wanted it or not. And we had a couple of times people said they didn't want it and the council said, yeah, fine. We get you guys in and you force it on us. I just think you're a very authoritarian regime. You don't listen to what the people of this borough want, you just force your view.
Well, if I might.
Is that a question?
Yeah, well, not really, but I will nonetheless address it. I think frankly, if those portrayal of events were accurate, forgive me, allow me to speak for a second. If that portrayal of events were accurate, I would entirely agree with you, but they're not. So first of all, on 20 mph, and look, I see this as very much, to use language appropriate for cars, as an issue in the rearview mirror. You're right, on one aspect, we did hold a consultation, not a referendum. 10,000 people, circa 10,000 people responded. The difference between those in favour was 171 votes or representations between those in favour and those against. That's it. Forgive me. Allow me to finish, please. Right. Otherwise, we're going to have a conversation which is going to overtake this event. It was a margin call. Now, do I stand by, and does this council stand by the fact that we took the decision nonetheless to implement 20 MPH with a set of modifications, reflecting more views than those who had that difference of opinion? I do, not least because at the last Transport Committee, we had data over a number of years which showed speeds are down over 2.6 miles an hour across the borough. On our fastest roads, they're down 4.4 miles an hour. And critically, the number of collisions occurring in the borough is down. There are people in this borough, forgive me, allow me to finish. There are people in this borough who have not been involved in accidents and incidents on the road because of the decision we have made. I'm immensely proud of that. I'm very pleased that residents have supported this through their driving behaviours and reduced the speeds on our roads. And I make no bones about that whatsoever. If your personal convenience of travelling an extra 10 miles an hour is more important to you than the safety of your fellow man, I don't break bread with that particular view. Now, on your parking point, which I would just very much more briefly address, in the time that we have run this administration, we have never introduced a controlled parking zone in an area that doesn't show demonstrable support for it. The facts, I'm afraid, sir, are fundamentally different from those you've presented.
If you force it, why not you know, you've got the power. You can force anything on us you like. And that's what my concern. You can force anything you like on us.
And every 4 years, you have the opportunity to elect us or another political party. That is how you make the decision over the
You can do whatever you like, have whatever control you like. You could say, okay, it's very dangerous going out your house. You know, if you go out your house more than 2 days a week, we're going to find it because it's dangerous.
And have we? Look, I hear your points. I'm afraid, as with Alex, I don't recognise the picture that you paint. However,
but why did you bother having the consultation? What was the point?
I'll answer that. That's right. I'm happy to. The point was to find out what people thought about the proposal.
People said they didn't want it, and you just ignored it.
Nearly 5,000.
Thank you, madam. Yeah. So if you're just going to shout out, it helps nobody. Now, what the question was about the 5248 was, do you want a borough-wide 20-mile-an-hour limit? Do you have a borough-wide 20-mile limit on all roads? No, you don't. No. There's A308 going through Hampton, 30 miles an hour. You don't have one. You said no. We made the changes based on the feedback, not just the numbers. You don't like it, but it's the facts. But there we are. Now, sir, thank you.
If I might add one thing, let's be entirely clear as well. We didn't force it on people. We made it, and actually, in the manifesto prior to our election in 2018, our manifesto said we would introduce 20 MPH around the borough. It was entirely clear and transparent in our manifesto. So I imagine, therefore, sir, you probably didn't vote for us. As a result, entirely understandable you might hold a different view from the administration that won a democratic election.
There we are. Sir, I really must ask you not to shout out. Do I see Celia Holm? Oh, Penny wants to come in. Then I'll bring in Celia. Is it about 20 miles an hour, Celia?
Hang on a minute. Could I just come in on the whole issue of road safety across the borough, 20-mile-an-hour speed limit being one aspect of that, and I have to say that overwhelmingly the elderly people and families with young children have been wholeheartedly endorsing having a speed limit across the borough, which actually supports the movement of elderly people, disabled people, people with mobility issues, people with young children, and it has paid off. It has brought down the speeds across the borough. It's made it possible for people to feel much more confident
crossing the roads and acting as pedestrians or as cyclists. And certainly I'm a cyclist, and I come under the elderly bracket these days. And I'm very pleased that we have had an opportunity to pull down the speeds across the borough. So I'm saying that on behalf of families and children. Thank you.
We have to cross. The cyclists go faster than the cars.
Not
I have questions from the chair.
There are no crossings, there are no islands. And the elderly cannot cross because the cyclists are going so fast and they're faster than the cars. How do you explain that?
I'm afraid I can't explain that. Did I see, Mr. Juber, is this 20 miles an hour? Yeah. It is, and this gentleman is as well. So I'm going to come to you, I'm going to come to that. I don't know, I wasn't able to ascertain whether Celia was doing 20 or not, but we'll try. Vehicular movements.
Talking statistics on accidents. What was the statistic on more serious accidents since the 20 mile an hour restriction became in?
So as the Transport Committee that heard this item discussed only very recently, there has been from a very small base, there has been a percentage increase in those serious road incidents. Having said that, sir, I see your eyebrows raised. I put this to you as I do to anybody who raises this matter with me. If anybody, yes, I am, sir. If anybody can plausibly make the argument to me that having a 10 mile an hour higher speed limit would have done anything other than increase the number of serious incidents, again, I'm afraid I disagree fundamentally.
25 mile an hour?
We can't do 25. We looked at all of this back then. Mr. Juber and then Celia.
Thank you. Yeah. I tend to agree that in the main, the 20 mile an hour does work. The only issue is, sorry, can I talk? The only issue relates to certain roads like the Petersham Road. There are certain roads where it could be still back to 30. But I think in the main where we've got narrow streets, lots of schools and so on, I wasn't with it initially, but I kind of feel that it is right. The issue that's been mentioned, we're back again, unfortunately, to bikes, to e-bikes, to the delivery drivers and so on. Yeah. That is the bit, back to law enforcement and so on, that is the bit that is out of control and is an issue which I feel needs to be seriously looked at. And I'd like to know whether you are discussing it, consulting, looking at what you can do in association with the police to curb the way in which cyclists, and especially e-bikers, are behaving. I mean, I live on Richmond Hill. We have been bombing down the hill on a regular basis. We used to have, when we had more police, when John had more people, we used to regularly see people being stopped. Nothing like that happens anymore.
Yeah. So I think they're all interesting and good points. I think so. On 20 mph, just for what it's worth, thank you very much for your comments. It's good to hear somebody whose view has evolved on the issue as much as anything else. I think just to say on that, there is a very strong argument for what we did. I feel in the simplicity of the majority of the roads being of the same speed has aided that reduction in speed. More of a patchwork quilt, I think, wouldn't have had the same level of effect. On bikes, look, we're cognizant of it. In fact, to the gentleman who spoke before you's question, one of the things that we think, but we need to validate that, behind some of the increase in the serious incidents taking place on our roads is because of an exponential increase in the amount of what are called powered two-wheelers. And we think, again, but we need to validate this, that a lot of that may be about the explosion in the delivery culture that has happened post-COVID and the demands that those people are under. Now, I think it's worth saying, I see those people as victims within this process because more often than not, those are the people that are harmed. And I think it is important to bear in mind, though I don't in any way take away the concerns that people have around seeing vehicles travelling at high speed, two-wheelers travelling at high speed, and some discourteous, to say the least, behaviour by cyclists as well as other road users. But we need to ground ourselves in the evidence here The people that are hurt on our road network are most typically pedestrians and cyclists. And actually the biggest threat to life and limb on our road network is evidentially validated to be car drivers. So we have to be proportionate in where the harm is in fact occurring rather than perceived to be. So we will be looking at whether we can take further action alone and with other agencies on powered two-wheelers if the evidence exists. But I just want to caution against the trap of any of us falling into a kind of culture war, us versus them against certain modes. The evidence is clear. The vehicles that cause the harm to us as borough residents, more often than not, are road users and motorists, not cyclists.
Sure.
Mr. Jubilee, I've got people waiting, and this becomes a dialogue rather than a conversation. So
I thought a dialogue was a conversation.
not necessarily.
Okay, so I get one shot at it.
Yeah.
Couple of things. Here in the audience, it can feel quite combative with some of these responses. So I would kind of throw it out there, and there doesn't, I think Councillor Roberts, you're being the moderator. But I would just say we can kind of take an edge off some of these responses a little bit. We have come here for a conversation, not a kind of telling off. You're here for a telling off, not us.
No, we are not.
Anyway. Enough. Here's I am a sort of supporter of 20 miles an hour because I am predominantly a cyclist. I was sceptical about it, and now I embrace it. And I'm going to get to the point I want to make, but I'm just going to make add a little thought, especially because I've seen a representative from the Metropolitan Police sitting here at the back. Hello. But how often it's the perception of the potential of harm that can be as harmful as the harm itself. So I absolutely appreciate what Councillor is saying about how the accidents are, people on the receiving end of accidents from cars, how catastrophic that can be, and so forth. But I think if you are a differently citizen, maybe of a certain age. I can remember when I had a broken arm, I felt particularly vulnerable, and you're walking along, for example, Twickenham High Street, and there are cyclists weaving in and out of you on the high street. Whilst you might not be hit by these cyclists, your kind of anxiety level, your perception of fear. And I certainly know from my interactions with police liaison groups who regularly bring this up, as I'm sure you're aware at the back. It is a kind of, recurring theme at police liaison groups, this perception of how there might be an accident. The fact that they don't happen doesn't take that away. I'm a big cyclist and I'm waiting for my next accident to be with a scooter. I appreciate that, people who are on these scooters, they're hustling to make the next dollar, but I just see them looking at their phones mounted on their front as they weave in and out of traffic. I'm literally just waiting for one to hit me, so I'm just kind of flagging that up. That is a perception of fear that I carry around with me. So we're going to put all of that to one side and get to what I wanted to say, which was, does the panel have any indication of when the changes to the road configuration and the parking in central Twickenham are going to take place? Because obviously the Riverside development is coming through, there's part of the Diamond Jubilee Gardens boarded off, the contractor is meant to be going on site, I think it's January, February, the Sunshine Cafe is closing, that's a whole other matter. So is there going to be a kind of gradual introduction, or is it going to be like a Band-Aid that we rip off all in one go? Who wants to take that one?
So don't be combative.
No, all of the questions that were asked me, obviously, were in a very, very calm and considered way too. So, look, On power to wheel, I know and I understand the concerns. And as I say, we'll look at whether or not we can find clear evidence of a need for action. I do think, though, that we do need to be an evidence-led council. If we acted purely on perception, we'd be doing all sorts of things that frankly wouldn't be in the best interests of borough residents. But I hear the point, and it's not the first time, as you say, that I have heard it. On Twickenham Riverside, officers are a good way through having compiled initial proposals for what will happen with elements of parking and so on. And once they're finalised, they'll come for various clearance to myself and others within the system before being implemented. So soon, I'm afraid, is the best answer I can give you. I can't give you a specific date.
I thought they were all approved in November 2021. I actually attended the.
No, the outlines were, but the actual detail of where the parking provision reallocation will take place
going to go.
Yet to be formally confirmed.
Right, okay, that wasn't kind of part of the planning application. So there's still work to do on that. Okay, I'll watch this space. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And we would have been. If we've got time, we'll come to line. That wasn't supposed to sound so clear. The body. That's what it says on the screen.
Yes, good evening. I can hear you.
Good evening.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation to attend, first and foremost. My questions relate to the same topic on education. I'm concerned as to whether or not the council has undertaken an impact study on the effect of the VAT imposition on private schools and the impact that will have on our excellent state schools in the borough. I'm a former headmaster in the borough, and I am concerned about this whole topic, but primarily after the numbers we're beginning to see. This morning, one of the newspapers was claiming that there could be up to 180,000 private school students across the country having to withdraw because of this hike in the fees through VAT. We as a borough may be ameliorated from some of it because of the general wealth in the borough and so forth, but I suspect we will still suffer. And those children being removed from private schools will have to go to state schools. So one, has the council done an impact study on the likely effect on our state schools? And two, perhaps a little later down the line, what help or assistance might be able to be given to the state schools so that they can maintain their excellent reputation, because they do deliver excellent education?
Thank you. Okay, Penny, your question. Remember to show your workings.
Thank you. It's very hard to do an impact study on something that hasn't happened. And so I think that one of the issues that has clouded this is that there was this very big media campaign where in order to try to stop the imposition of the 20% VAT on independent school fees, people who were at parents of children at independent schools were all warmly encouraged to write to their local authorities to say, you know, I will be removing my child, and you know, you must make space for my child in your schools. That was a very sort of carefully and heavily orchestrated media campaign. So far, it has not come to anything within our borough. I can't speak for other boroughs. It is very unusual, I would think, for parents to consider withdrawing a child who is already in a school and enjoying their particular school life and the friendships that they've made and the relationships with the teachers. We are not expecting to see withdrawals I would be much more keen for parents to get onto the independent schools and saying, come on, you're already taking from us as fees about 4 times the amount which goes to our local authorities for schools in the maintained sector and academy schools. Now, why can independent schools feel that it's okay to charge that much money for their children's education? Why are they not saying to parents, look, you know, we can see that there is an issue likely on the horizon here. We will do our very best to absorb this 20%
well, many of them are.
VAT. I hope they are. I hope they are. Because I think, personally, I think it's outrageous. And I think that that schools, the independent schools, we need to look very, very carefully at the way in which they are charging the fees that they charge for what they offer. If our schools then find that they are, over the course of time, absorbing children who might otherwise have gone into the independent sector, then you know, we will be making the appropriate provisions for them, as we have to do, because of course it is a duty on local authorities to provide every child with a place in an education institution. So we will need to look at that as and when the time comes, and we're not seeing that shift at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your answer. I'm afraid, and I don't want to put any edge on this, but I do think it's quite out of touch, frankly, with the reality of the situation. Although I'm no longer a headmaster in the borough, I'm following this issue particularly carefully, and I can tell you that this imposition of VAT is forcing parents to withdraw. And the idea that you can't do an impact study before something has happened is quite extraordinary. There are very many ways in which you can ascertain, if you so wish, that what is going to happen. And it sounds to me, frankly, that you may have dropped the ball on this one. I really hope that the levels of withdrawal from private schools in this borough are not as great as they are in many other boroughs. But the fact that you're saying that private schools should do more to ameliorate, well, of course, they are already doing a lot to ameliorate, including losing teachers. So, you know, this is a real issue, and you are going to have to face placing displaced children into borough state schools. And the parents here are lucky because the state schools are so good. But, you know, can you assure me that there are places in your state schools for these children who are having to be withdrawn?
For all the, every year we have a policy which has to be considered for school admission. So we look at school place planning policy across the whole borough. And that, of course, includes our looking at the edges of the borough, because we have children who come into our borough from other boroughs, and indeed we have children who go out of our borough into other boroughs. So there's always a lot of movement into and out of our schools. There's a lot of in-year admission movement. We plan very carefully, and we have a team of people working at the borough whose job is very specifically to ensure that the children who are seeking places within our borough are given the opportunity to do that. Because you're absolutely right that our schools are first class, they're absolutely top. I can't understand why anybody would want to send their child to an independent school within the borough, given that our schools are really so top notch. But a number of them do, for all sorts of reasons.
Well, you've got some of the best independent schools in the country in the borough. And for one of those, for the reasons that your state schools are so good and the private schools are so good, is why so many people are attracted to the borough. So this is a really significant issue. And I'd certainly be very happy to come and talk privately to you, not take up any more time tonight, just to fill you in on some of the knowledge gaps which are clearly present in your understanding of the situation. I'm afraid you weren't able to give me an assurance that you could place all of these children who are displaced. I understand about the planning process annual. I was a school governor as well in a state school here in the borough. So I understand that process, but you do need to be able to give some assurance to the people of this borough that if they do withdraw their children from private schools, there are places in state schools for them.
Okay, very quickly then, we have places right across our primary sector. We are able to absorb the children who might be seeking places within the primary sector, within the secondary sector. Our secondary schools are all of them secondary academies, and they make their own admissions policies. And so what they would do if they have additional numbers of parents who are asking for, putting their school as the first place, they would then, the schools themselves would then look at how they set their own admissions criteria. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. Every year, our admissions team absorb the children who come into the borough, the children within the borough who are seeking places. And every year we go through the school place planning policy so that we are sure that it is completely roadworthy for all the children and families within the borough and those seeking places within the borough. We have not seen a shift of people withdrawing their children or planning to withdraw their children out of the independent sector within the borough at present. Obviously, this is being watched very, very closely by our school place planning team, who are very experienced in this area. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Right. I did get at least one indication that there was a desperate desire to talk about bicycles on pavements and parked on pavements. Can we have the microphone, please? And this will be our last, ladies and gentlemen, our last question.
Yes, I just wanted to say, these bicycles just left on their side right across a pavement are a great hazard to disabled people, people in wheelchairs who then can't get past. I mean, is there any plan to say perhaps there should be stands in each corner or something so people can't just leave them anywhere?
Yeah, so this is a complex and evolving policy area because at present, it's fair to say there are instances of non-compliant and therefore restrictive parking of these bikes in some places of different degrees of severity, it has to be said. Some are aesthetically, unpleasant, some are actually a hazard. I do have to say, I put it in the context of the fact though that 60,000 journeys a month are taking place within this borough on these bikes. That is going to have a positive effect on air quality and people's health, and we must recognise that on the pro side. Indeed, within the course of this meeting, my math says that that's 166 journeys have taken place just during the course of the 2 hours that you've been here. So the number of instances, however much I witness them as much as anybody else, have to be put in the context of those very high usage levels. There are conversations going on at a London-wide level, whether or not a move to a more mandatory bay-to-bay model is the right thing to do. The jury is out on whether or not that will in fact come to be. I just want to put out there that there are drawbacks to that approach too, though. The most notable being you need to provide as a borough a very extensive network of these bays, which will mean many, many bays presently used for car parking all over the borough will need to be switched to that purpose. So that is a significant drawback for all of the pros of perhaps having them in these constrained locations. That's why actually this borough favours an approach, and are pursuing an approach, of requiring mandatory bays in very high concentration and problematic areas, and leaving the free float model, the ability to be able to park bikes responsibly in suitable locations that aren't mandated bays, in effectively a lot of residential streets. As with so many things, though, whatever users they are and whatever form of transport they use, there are good people and there are perhaps slightly less so. And it's very difficult to legislate for some of those who are behaving poorly. I would just add, one of the issues as well, just a small subset, is that these bikes can be, sadly, still what is called hacked. So effectively ridden without permission, which we believe is also contributing to some of these less compliant parking behaviours. And that is a particularly difficult nut to crack, because as you'll appreciate, even if we mandate bay parking, people who are actually outside the system are not going to pay any heed to that at all anyway. One very last thing is forest bikes, you may have seen as distinct from Lime bikes, they should not be in this borough. We have no contractual arrangement with Lime, we have with Forest, I should say. We have made that abundantly clear. And indeed, if Forest do not get their act together and remove their bikes from this borough, we will be taking action to sweep those up and making them responsible for the cost of doing so. The approach that Lime as the private provider allowed for, and the technology that supports it, doesn't allow for a distinction between locations based on the technology. So they can be on pavement because the technology simply doesn't exist to be able to rule out pavement parking. The photographs that people have to take after use are not technologically robust enough to be able to differentiate between road and pavement. So they do, whether or not they're encouraged to be on pavement or not, the systems do not prohibit pavement parking. I encourage anybody that dares to listen or does to park them in the carriageway. That is certainly what I do as a user of these bikes from time to time. I personally park them at a right angle to the curb where there's space and no great proximity to cars, but other users park differently.
And just in case you think that the council's not taking it seriously, Alex and I had a meeting with the head guys from Lime just a week last Thursday, I think it was, and we have another one scheduled in with them in the next 2 weeks, so that we can keep feeding back and encouraging them to take more responsibility for what are their vehicles, which are causing inconvenience to our residents, notwithstanding, I've been sitting next to you for too long, notwithstanding the benefits that these bikes can bring. Now, before we allow you out, Nancy would like to say a couple of words about the other type of community conversation which we have going on in this borough.
Okay, thank you all very much for coming today, and thank you for making this a wide open and wide ranging discussion of some of the things that we're doing. We also run community conversations on much more local levels. So we will put, we call them our ward community conversations. And what we'll do is we'll put 2 wards together. So we'll say, for example, mine, which is North Richmond, will be with Q. And then and the residents from that can come and ask us much more local questions and talk about the things that are happening much more locally. So please be on the lookout for those, and do make sure that you sign up for them. There will be a similar setup as we have here. You can either join us virtually or you can join us in person. If you have any particular requirements in terms of accessibility, whether that's getting in the building or having a signer or any other thing, you just let us know and we can provide that for you. There will be a schedule of events coming up very soon, so be on the lookout for it. And thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, so it only leaves me to say thank you very much to our panel who've tried to answer your questions to the best of their abilities. Thank you very much. Thank the people who are at home joining in through the Zoom. Our council officers who've worked hard to put this event on. Our sign language interpreter who's been working very hard out of the corner of my eye. Thank you very much. And our chair. Thank you very much. Somebody's been kind enough to thank the chair. But as always, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is always chiefly yourselves that makes these meetings. Oh, thank you, John McLaughlin, for sitting all the way through. But thank you. Hope to see you next time around the block. Do come along. Do. Thank you so much. Take care. Good night. Bye-bye.